Those were the days.
Hey everyone, Justin Lee Harold here with another edition of Those Are the Days Extended. Today I'm taking you back to December 16th, 1998, where we had the interesting nuptials of one Mr. Stefano Demira and Vivian Alamain when they were married. Now, this was a very interesting, sort of fun, kind of funny plot line that had a little some poignancy there, which I'll get into a little bit later, but this one was just sort of a fun, crazy one. I don't know if you remember. It wasn't a long-lasting marriage, of course, or a long-lasting storyline, but I think it did a lot, particularly for the character of Vivian Alamain, which we'll get into. But yeah, we first sort of start this storyline when Vivian was sort of we meet Vivian and she's sort of left penniless from one of her latest scams. And so she meets this sort of unique man named Jonesy. He's kind of like this eccentric, kind of loud, kind of quasi drunk, quasi homeless man sort of around Salem. And he sort of takes a liking to Vivian, thinks she's glamorous and everything. And Vivian sort of kind of swats him away and doesn't think anything of him at first. And I think he sort of wears her down. They sort of happen to serendipitously run into each other over the course of a couple of weeks, and he sort of wears her down. I think she starts feeling sorry for him. And like I said, Vivian is in a very vulnerable state. She's out of money. Her and Yvonne are sort of left broke. She's sort of thinking of what her next plan is going to be or move is going to be. So anyway, she sort of develops this quasi friendship with, again, this eccentric older man named Jonesy, who she kind of, again, takes a liking to. Then she actually finds out that he is the owner of not only a large townhouse, but also this incredibly expensive art collection that is worth millions. So, in true Vivian fashion, she sort of allows herself to fall for him and date him. And to her credit, she actually does fall for Jonesy, and actually does come to love him and admire him and sort of get to know him a little bit more on a deeper level. And so he proposes. They end up actually getting married. And then the unfortunate part is Jonesy passes away on their wedding night after they consummate their marriage. So again, this is sort of where the silliness and comedy comes in. They literally finish and then they talk about how great it is to be married. It's their wedding night. And then Jonesy basically has a heart attack and dies there. So he's sort of, again, Vivian is sort of distraught over Jonesy's death and she's a bit comforted by the fact that he left everything to her in his will, the townhouse, the money, the art. And so she's sort of unlucky in love, but she is sort of back to her original glory, I guess. And then she sort of begins this attraction and she garners the attraction and attention of one Mr. Stefano Demira. He sort of sets his sight on this romantic relationship with Vivian. Now, again, not because he actually likes her, but because it turns out that the townhouse, the art, and the money are actually Stefano's and they were not Jonesy's. Apparently, Jonesy was an employee and a caretaker of Stefano's things. He basically put all of these things in Jonesy's name because he wanted to hide them. He was afraid of them being confiscated in case he got caught from one of his many crimes, which he was involved in at the time. So he basically found Jonesy. Jonesy started working for him. He puts everything, he basically hides all this stuff, puts it in Jonesy's name. Now, of course, Stefano is pissed that Jonesy has now died, married Vivian, and left everything to her. So Stefano decides that the only way to remedy this and get everything back is to marry Vivian and basically drive her crazy. Now, the way that he does this is he gets the infamous Dr. Rolf to implant this sort of device in her tooth that allows Stefano to control Vivian and sort of make her do wacky things and make her sort of go crazy. Now, of course, we remember that Vivian has a history of mental illness. So the idea is that in controlling her through this device that's implanted in her tooth, it will sort of drive her crazy again. And then he can play it off as a mental illness and he can either kill her or basically have her committed. which makes him, which would make him, everything would revert back to him. The townhouse, the money, the art, basically, he would not only have, but also be in control of again. So that is the plan. Of course, we know that eventually gets thwarted with the help of a few people who are in Vivian's corner. And that was due to, of course, Vivian finds out. She sort of turns the table on Stefano, and she gets to sort of walk away with a little bit of revenge. She gets Stefano to sort of grant her a divorce and basically pay her out in order to basically keep her mouth shut that he sort of did this and was trying to have her committed and or killed. And so Vivian sort of walks away kind of in a better position than she sort of started all this in this journey. But I do want to talk about this particular plot line for Vivian because I think it did. As I said, it was fun, it was silly, it was a little zany, especially for days involving Stefano here. But what I think it did is it opened up the character of Vivian because at this point she had come across this long strings of just her being just this heartless sort of manipulative person. We saw that she was sort of the mama bear to like Nicolette, to Lawrence and Nikki Alamain, that she was sort of the bad guy to Carly's good guy. We saw that she was sort of the bad girl to Kate's good girl and sort of the affections of Victor. So I think this was a way to open up the character a bit and soften her a little bit. And they did that by sort of incorporating not only Yvonne, we know Yvonne is sort of her loyal servant and has been for years and in love with her and is attached with her at the hip, but they also did this by including John and Stefano. I mean, not John, John and Celeste in the mix. They sort of had her and Celeste come together and make this like really sort of have this sort of beautiful kind of really friendship of equals, which was really kind of nice just because Celeste and her had not been in each other's orbit. But again, Celeste is coming from the fact of she's not with Stefano anymore. She's not working for him. She's trying to turn over a new leaf and do good. And then she sort of gets attached to Vivian. They become really good, fast friends. And sort of Celeste is in her corner. And she's actually one of the first people to sort of spot what Stefano is doing. And she's sort of in Vivian's ear trying to warn her against sort of getting involved with Stefano and really falling for his mess. She doesn't know what he's up to, but she knows that he's up to something. So Vivian sort of has Yvonne and then she has Celeste in her corner. And at this time, they also sort of play up, the relationship that she has with John. And those that don't remember, that Vivian is actually John's aunt. Again, John was originally Forrest Alamain. He was the son of Philomena and Leopold Alamain, who is, and Leopold is Vivian's brother. So that's how, of course, Vivian is John's aunt. And they sort of played up this relationship and this familiar relationship during this time, with John really stepping in and like kind of sticking up for Vivian and coming to her rescue a lot and really trying to like forge a real familial bond with her during this time. And he was sort of in her corner and wanting her to turn over a new leaf. And she kind of was doing that with the relationship with Jonesy. And then, she's starting to get involved with Stefano here and John sort of on the suspicious end. So it was sort of Vivian moving over to the dark side with Stefano and sort of Celeste, Yvonne, and John kind of trying to pull her back a little bit here. So yeah, that's kind of how that storyline concluded until, as far as we know, and now what we have is 20 years later, Stefano and Vivian's history is now expanded when in December 2017, Vivian comes back to town and it is revealed that she in fact gave birth to a son that she thought was stillborn. The baby was conceived from a time when Stefano was posing as someone else and trying to seduce Vivian to get his hands on this ruby that she had. So basically, Yvonne took the baby, placed it up for adoption. And of course, we come to find out that that baby was, in fact, Stefan Octavius de Mira. So that is where the origin of Stefan came from. We know that, of course, the powers that be were trying to introduce Stefan into the mix and give us another Demira that sort of rivaled EJ and Tony and bring him into the mix. And I think they needed a way to do that. So usher in sort of Vivian. But I think what it did for Vivian was it got her a little bit away from the Kuriakises, which I think she had outgrown, and sort of supplemented her with the Demiras a bit, which I think she sort of, as always, fit a little bit more in that storyline, kind of similar to Kate's trajectory. So I think it placed her now with this sort of, And again, we all know it was a bit of a retcon, but I think it ultimately sort of worked with her coming in and being Stefan's mom. So again, it kind of cemented her as one of Stefano's various baby mamas. Now, of course, Stefano was gone at this point, but I think it was a way to bring sort of bring back Louise Sorel and sort of figure out where she stands in the show and sort of where her character fits. And I think she definitely fits more, I think, in the Demira fold than I think she fits in with the Curiacuses now. Now again, we see in real time that she's slightly mixed in with the Curiacuses here with this Philip plot line that we're seeing play out in real time. But yeah, that was sort of the genesis in the going back and sort of looking back at Stefano and Vivian's sort of whirlwind romance. Again, it was a fun, sort of silly little plot line, but I think again, what I think it did is expanded the character of Vivian. It made her the sympathetic character in that situation, which she had never been in her history on the show. Again, she was a straight up villain who I think we all sort of love to hate, but I think it cast her a little bit in a new light here and gave her some sympathy, and we were really sort of rooting for her against Stefano at this point. So yeah, that was sort of the saga of Stefano and Vivian and their very short-lived but impactful relationship and eventual marriage. So yeah, that was December 16th, 1998. And yeah, see you guys next time. Thanks.
Those were